Welcome to the Biotech Startups Podcast by Exceeder. Join us as we speak with first-time founders, serial entrepreneurs, and experienced investors about the challenges and triumphs of running a biotech startup, from pre-seed to IPO, with your host, Jon Chee.
My guest today is Ivan Liachko, founder and CEO at Phase Genomics. Phase Genomics was founded with the mission of maximizing the impact of genomics on society. With the vast majority of biological information remaining unexplored, Phase Genomics seeks to empower researchers to make breakthrough discoveries using the power of advanced next-generation genomic tools. The cornerstone of their approach lies in a technology called proximity ligation, which enables unprecedented improvements in the depth and quality of information generated from DNA sequencing efforts. From tracking viruses and their targets to detecting chromosomal abnormalities in oncology samples, their molecular and computational tools add a new dimension to genomic information. By continuously developing new genomic methods, Phase Genomics seeks to bring transformative change to research, industry, and the clinic. Ivan is a molecular geneticist with over 2 decades of experience in wet lab and computational biology. He's passionate about applying genomic technology to improve our world and mentoring scientists who are interested in commercialization. Ivan received his PhD from Cornell and has authored over 50 peer-reviewed papers and created multiple patents specializing in the field of microbial genomics and synthetic biology. He is one of the original inventors of Phase Genomics' core technology and has served as CEO since their founding. With deep expertise in genomics, synthetic biology, and entrepreneurship, Ivan offers a unique perspective on translating scientific innovation into real-world impact, making this a conversation you won't want to miss. Over the next 4 episodes, Ivan shares how his passion for genetics, nature, and clever science led him from academic research to founding Phase Genomics. He reflects on his time in the lab, the discovery of proximity ligation, and how it unlocked breakthroughs in genome assembly, microbiome research, and structural variant detection. Ivan also explores the challenges of company building, the role of non-dilutive funding, and how Phase is positioned at the forefront of biology's next information revolution. Today, we're diving into Ivan's early years growing up in Kyiv, immigrating to the US, and the early spark that drew him to genetics. He shares stories of paging through a Soviet-era biology encyclopedia as a kid, getting his first lab job at 16, and how persistence, not polish, helped him break into science. We'll also explore how Ivan's upbringing shaped his leadership style, what it was like navigating school as an immigrant, and how a deep curiosity for biology opened doors throughout his early career. Without further ado, let's dive into this episode of the Biotech Startups Podcast. Ivan, so good to see you again. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hi, John. Thanks so much for having me.
So I know it's been a while since we last chatted, but as we were getting prepared for this conversation and thinking about where to start, we really wanted to just go back to the earliest days to really just unpack kind of what got you into science, what were some formative moments that influenced your leadership style and your business philosophy. So if you could you take us back to, your upbringing? What was it like? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, totally. So I grew up in Kyiv in Ukraine, and I immigrated to the US when I was 11 years old. And so the first few years, up to grade 3 or whatever it was, I lived in the Soviet Union. This was right, before they split. And so my upbringing was, my family were, they were academics. They were professors and things like that. And I became really, nobody was a biologist. They were all math people and stuff. But I became really interested in bio and life science stuff super early, like a kid. A lot of kids want to be astronauts and fire people and stuff like that. I just wanted to do genetics.
Yeah.
Tiny
rare,
kid.
Rare.
And it's largely because that, it was just it was very interesting. I remember I had this giant book of it was some kind of weird, communist biology, encyclopedia, but it was just fascinating, all the pictures and stuff like that. So I was super into it from a very young age. And so, later, when I came, and of course, my grandparents encouraged a lot. When I came to the US, I started working in labs when I was 16 years old. Being a biologist, all I want to do, I never had I was either that or a doctor of some sort, but basically doing life science, biology, genetic research, that was always what I wanted to do.
Sweet.
And so I only ever did that. So when I started Phase, one of the fun facts is people would be what kind of company do you want? How do you want to run it? What kind of culture? And I was like, I've never worked at a company before starting a company. I've worked in labs for like 20 years. I've never worked at a company. And so I've been a scientist like all the time. I at some point in high school, I was living in Philadelphia, and we immigrated. We lived in Philly. I won this kind of like summer undergrad, like high school internship thing at UPenn, and I just started working in the lab. Doing super basic, like high school student science stuff. And
it's basically doing the dishes almost.
Doing dishes is one, and they would let me like purify a plasmid once in a while. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then like my fellowship ended, but I just went back to them and I was just like, hey, can I work here more? And I just would pester them until they let me. And like every summer, I was just like charming about it and cute. And so they would let me. It was like,
yeah.
And so I would just like, that's how it was. It was just like, I would just kept going back and I was like, give me another job, give me more work.
I love that.
And I just worked, and then of course, and the same thing in undergrad, and so basically, like that's all I ever wanted to do is just to work in labs and be a scientist in this space. But that's kind of how my story goes. At least the early stages is just like fell in love with it super early on. Had a lot of encouragement from family. Now the other wrinkle is obviously had I not immigrated to the U.S. It never would have happened, right? So very grateful for that turn of events.
It's funny because I'm thinking back when I was 16, I was like screwing around on a skateboard. I was like,
I wasn't not screwing around on skateboard.
Yeah.
Like that was like my job thing.
Yeah. It's kind of I guess I wasn't nearly as ambitious or at least I was ambitious, but I had not yet found the calling, which, and it's you can't really time those things up when you find those kind of like moments of inspiration, but that's really cool. It's funny to communist biology book. You're just like, rad, like this is it.
There's like stuff in there. I don't know what it is, right? Like, but like, there's pictures or DNA. There's I think a lot of scientists are like that. A lot of people are like, they're just kind of enthralled with like the subject matter itself.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps them going through, grad school and all that stuff, or they're making sub minimum wage and they're, like, that's what keeps you going. Like there's something about it, like that, like the little DNA picture I have back there. It's just like, it just compels you to work on it.
I mean, it's kind of like and that I would say like the willingness to run through walls derives from that. Like, inevitably you're going to like face these obstacles and you're just like, the question is like, how bad do you want it, or how compelling is that thing? And if you just like wake up, you're like, I actually don't really like this at all. Like you're just like,
right. It's sort of like, it's not a logical decision process, right? It's a process that's based on passion, and passion is chaos. Right? You're doing unreasonable things, sometimes for reasons you can't explain to anyone why. You're just like, that's just what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. And from your parents' perspective, they're like, okay, you're not going into math. Was there ever kind of like, but they're like, were they pumped that you're like into academia? They're like, hell yeah.
It was different there. I mean, everybody wants to be educated, and it's like an honored thing, right? Like it's like nobody ever criticized you for wanting to be a scientist, right? You know, like I didn't really face any downward pressure that way. There are careers where people will be like, potentially parents will like frown upon. But you're like, yo, my kid wants to be a scientist. Like no one's gonna have a problem with that, right?
Yeah, I was reading the Michael Dell book, and his parents were, I believe, physicians. They're just like doctors, and he was like, yeah, I want to build computers and like sell them from this garage. And they're like, what? They were like, how could you? Like, this is not in the cards. But we know how that ends. But
yeah, I mean, my situation was very encouraging. Like it was like more education, more science. Like, of course, we encourage a kid to do that stuff.
You're getting your early lab experience in high school and then also one thing that stood out to me is like the value of persistence. Like for anyone listening out there, there's like, what is the saying? It's better to be annoying than forgotten. And
That's my motto.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
my motto. A lot of my
believe that too.
employees will attest to this.
Yeah. I believe that too. Like, I mean, there's something to be said about that persistence, like that, and especially at that age, it's probably really endearing. You're just like, why wouldn't you want to feed that curiosity? For anyone out there who's like, look, because a lot of the time people are like, how do you get these first roles? It's just like, you show up and be persistent and be authentic. Like, are you actually interested in this thing? More often than not, the people are like, oh, this person's really into this. Like, come on in.
Yeah, totally right. And I mean, it's like that. Like, there's grown up versions of that. It's called grit. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's more advanced, but it's the same disease, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I just want to do this. I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to wait for someone to like give me permission, right?
Yeah.
So
I love that.
A lot of times it comes with a certain level of just like ignorance or like just naivete, right? Like you don't know not to do it. You're like, I'm like you don't know that you're supposed to be like embarrassed or shy or whatever. You're just like you're just a little bit dumb.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to this guy's office and ask him for a job. Like everyone else, like, oh my god. You're not smart.
What's wrong with this?
That's not cool.
Yeah, this is not how it's usually done. Like,
right.
But like, I love that because I think, and especially as like a young student, and I think I've said this probably before, but it's just like, don't like, when you're a student, it's even kind of like people are even more receptive.
Well, you know what I tell people is, again, because I coach startups and founders, and people are thinking about founding stuff periodically. I'm like, imagine somebody did that to you. Like, imagine you had a student who said, "Dear so and so, can I just like talk to you for 20 minutes about this startup idea?" Like, what would you do? You'd be like, "How dare you?"
Yeah.
My time. No, you'd be like, "Of course I want to talk to you about. Come on over." Like, people love that stuff. So you're like, you think you're inconveniencing this guy. That's probably to him going to be the most enjoyable conversation he has that day.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so like, don't be afraid. Like, ask people for chats and help and ideas. Like, people love that stuff. You're not going to make anybody mad. The worst that's going to happen is they're going to say no, or they're going to ignore your email.
Yeah. Exactly. That's spot on. And it's like I think it's like, is that authentic curiosity? Just like, it's infectious, really, to be quite honest. And like, I mean, I take those calls all the time, and I'm like, hell yeah, this is awesome.
I get sales pitches from professionals 1 million times a day, and I almost always just like delete, ignore. If a student asks me, "Hey, can I talk to you for 20 minutes about the startup I'm trying to found?" there's like a 98% chance I'm going to say yes. Right? It's just like, it's like the most successful kind of outreach version when it's like an actual human being trying to learn something from you.
Yeah, spot on. And so like, it sounds like you were a beneficiary of, obviously everything we're describing right now. As you were approaching graduation, take us back to when you were like evaluating colleges to go to. Where were you looking at? Like, did you have your major? Like, I'm going to study biology at this university. Like, what were you thinking at that time?
As an immigrant, so one of the things about immigration, and people may not realize, immigration is really, really hard. Beyond like money and that kind of thing, even if you're not getting harassed by ICE and all this, right? So, and one of the difficulties with being an immigrant is that like, you don't understand how the system works, right? Like, your parents, like, they don't know how to fill out any paperwork. They don't know how taxes work. They don't know, like, how do you, like if you suddenly had to move to some faraway land, you have to be like, how do I get a driver's license? Like, no one, and you don't speak the language, or at least well enough. Like, the older generation generally, like, the kids pick up languages pretty quick, but like the parents, they have to like learn it. Like you're reading all this documentation, you don't know what any of it means. And so when it came to college application, again, nobody knows. Like, your parents don't know what are the good colleges. Like when you live in a society, you kind of know how the process works, and like there's like websites to research things and all this stuff. Back then they didn't have anything. And so like, I don't know, I'm a kid, like I'm a high school, like which college I go. So like, what are my criteria? I've lived in Philly, and I didn't know about 99.9% of the country, right? So how do you choose a college? Well, you go, okay, what kind of criteria can I put on this? You're like, well, how about stuff that's close to home?
Yep.
And you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know. What else? Schools that are good in biology. Like I knew that was going to be a focus for me. Schools that are good for in biology and also are close to home. Why did I want to stay close to home? No reason. Like you just don't. You're like, what else can I possibly say? So, and they have the common application where you just basically Xerox it back when Xeroxes used to happen, and you mail it to a bunch of different schools that are like, you check the boxes on the list and you're like, mail this out to all these different schools. And so I applied to, I really wanted to go to Penn because I worked there for a long time. And, it's one of those things where you like fall in love with the university just because that was the first one you worked at.
Yep.
So you're like, I must go to Penn. And I didn't end up getting into Penn, and like crushed me a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's what happens, right? Like you're like, I'm going to apply to this one school. I'm sure they're going to take me. And then you don't get in. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But luckily I had a friend. There was a friend of mine, it was like a family friend, like not like a close friend, but she was going to a school in Boston. To me, Boston might have as well been like Antarctica. Like, I don't know. Like it's like a different city. I'm 18 years old. I don't know anything. But they ended up accepting me and giving me a really good package. It was Brandeis University, right next to Boston, in a town called Waltham. And it was a great school. They were, look, I have my phone.
Yeah.
So I ended up going there, and I was like, like a world opened up to me where I was like, oh my God, Boston is an amazing place. Like I love it.
Yeah.
Big colleges, it's all students. It's like a whole new world. So I went to my undergrad largely on luck. Again, it was, I applied to a bunch of other places, but this was the best one. And it came on my list because a friend was like, I'm going there. You should go there too. And I was like, okay, an extra check on the common application, and so it wasn't, and because I just didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And nobody would help me. Like there's like the high school counselors, but they're not that useful. And the parents don't know, you don't have a network, you don't know how to do this. So it was dumb luck. I mean, I would say a lot of applications like that are dumb luck, because then I went, when I applied to grad school, again, you select some schools that are good in your area, and then you just like send applications. You don't know these places, you've never been there. And then you just look for one that accepts you.
Yeah. Which is kind of funny when you think about it. Like the way you describe it is just like, it almost feels random, but also at the same time, like the randomness is like, it's a major inflection point usually for people's lives. It's like, oftentimes when you go to like universities or grad school, it's like you like end up setting roots, and like the community starts to shape you. And it's funny how you're like, it can be just like, all right, checking the boxes and then see what comes. And then you just take what you can get.
It's random, but then you pick the outcome, right? So it's like there is a randomness to it, but it's actually very directed, because then you pick what happens at the end, right? It's like somebody, I forget who to attribute this quote to, but they said, what you're trying to do is you're trying to expose yourself to the largest surface area of luck.
Yep.
Right? You just like, you just try a bunch of stuff because you don't know what's out there.
Yeah.
Then when you get some wins, you can pick amongst them and you'll be surprised. Right.
Yep.
And that's what I tell students when they ask me about applications. I'm like, just like apply to everything. You don't know what's out there. You don't you've never been to Denver or whatever. Right.
Yep.
Like there's great schools there. Apply to a bunch of schools in Denver. You might find out it's an amazing place, which it is. But it's not on your mental radar, but just like throw stuff out there. Because and then when you get that lucky win, you pick it and you follow it.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me also too, just like even extending beyond school, but it's kind of like manufacturing like serendipity, or just like right. It's kind of this thing where I think for me, I'm more introverted than I used to think I was extroverted. And I met friends of mine who were like, saw them in action who are proper extroverts. I was like, oh, that's a whole nother level. But like, I was like, I don't really want to go out there. I'd like to just be heads down, kind of like doing my thing. And then I was like, I came out of my shell and like put myself out there a little bit more and increased that surface area. I was like, holy moly. Like I never knew that any like the super, thing that came out of the, the woodwork, just like opportunities presented themselves, which I would have, if I continue to stay in my shell, like it would have never, ever fucking been a thing. So I love that. And I think, people, for those who are introverted, like I recommend like just like stretching a little bit and getting out there and just like putting yourself out there a little bit more, because you will be surprised at kind of like what opportunities come forth.
Yeah, absolutely. What's cool is that the world is a much bigger place than you realize. And it actually, like the startup journey really taught me that too, because you realize that you can do like anything, right? A lot of times when I talk to academics who are studying a particular thing. So I did most of my academic career, like grad school and stuff, I worked in the humble yeast, which people are like, who does yeast? Who cares about yeast? But you're like, but that's like a lot of discoveries like come from yeast. It's like, it's the crucible of a lot of inventions. But a lot of people in the yeast space think that they have no career outside of yeast research.
Yep.
We're used to it. We're used to saying, this is what I work on. And you define yourself as that thing. And then you basically go, I have no marketable skills because all I know is this.
Yep.
This is the only thing I do. We limit ourselves like crazy, and breaking out in one of the things that going into the like business kind of environment and it taught me is that though there really aren't barriers like that. Like you can be like a yeast biologist for 20 years and then start selling like power bikes or what.
Yeah.
Like, or whatever. Like you can literally do anything. You can start a service company. You can start a company where you're just helping other people learn stuff. You can become a YouTuber. You can start manufacturing things. There's a company here in Seattle, one of my friends, and one of the best like young companies here, I think, is called A Alpha. They use yeast display to basically screen drug targets, right? Like, like I use David, their CEO, David Younger, their founder and CEO. I use him as an example for the yeast people. I'm like, you yeast people. I was one for 20 years. Here's a guy who started a company using like yeast screening and now doing drugs for pharma, and it's amazingly successful. Like that's an example for folks who say there's no marketable skills here. Like the world is infinite. You can do, there's so many things you can do. You're worried about it because you're scared of losing your like whatever academic thing. And it's only like, you get pushed out of the nest. You realize actually the world is huge. The opportunity set is almost unlimited. You can do almost anything you want. And it's super encouraging, even in difficult times. Like I watch a lot of, I read a lot and watch a lot of like YouTube videos from people who do other business things.
Yep.
Just so cool to understand it as you become less of like, I am this person and this is my job and I'm defined this way, to say like, I'm actually like a traveler in this kind of like river of life where everything is happening. Some of it is science, some of it is not science. There's human interactions. And like, I'm just taking part of that and I can do whatever, right?
I think that's a really important point. And I think especially when I talk to folks who are going through grad school, there's a kind of this existential dread as they're like, oh my God, like this skill set is not marketable. And I'm like, it absolutely, the point is,
you don't understand what the skill set is.
Yes.
You have drawn a little straw man of yourself.
Yeah.
And you're saying that guy can never get a job, but that's actually not you.
Yeah.
You just like, and to some extent I blame academia for this because it makes people think that like it makes people think there's certain abusive parts of that. Not nobody's like doing it on purpose, but like the system is basically, it's almost like if I don't like you, no one else will like you.
Yes.
And that's there's a toxic part of academia that does that to people, but you're like, no, that's not you. You can do a bazillion other things. You're super good at it. You just learned to value yourself based on like your one skill set. But anyway, that's a whole other tirade to go on. But
I think it is important because I think it's like you've been taught how to think. It is like if you abstract it a little bit, it's just like how to problem solve and how to think and how to deal with uncertainty. And it's like a grown up term of gritting, like grit, right? You really it's like getting through, tough shit. And
exactly, what's more gritful or whatever than getting your PhD when, like, especially in life sciences where 99% of what you do doesn't work. You have to keep trying, keep hammering, and then 6 years later you have your thesis and you're like, oh man, I could have done all this work in the last 6 months had I known all this stuff. But you had to break through and learn for the first 5 years or whatever, and that process is irreplaceable.
Yep.
But people don't value it because you can't quantitate it.
Yeah.
You can't because you didn't like succeed, right? You're like, you feel like you were failing for years and then you just succeeded at the very end. And so you're like, I don't have any skills. You're like, that thing you did is incredible. Like most people don't get to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And also it's like very reminiscent of running a business. You're like,
yes, exactly.
Which is the craziest part. Cause I'm like, anytime I talk to a grad student or a postdoc, I'm just like, you got this is like your trial run if you want to, like, not like starting a business is not, I will never say is for everybody, but it's like, I don't know, like that was a pretty good trial run. Like,
Oh, right. Exactly. You're like, everybody, like you watch any of these like visionaries or YouTube things and TED Talks, it's about like the power of failure, how important it is to fail and learn and get back on your feet and try again and fail again. And then you're like, what's more like that than your PhD, right?
Yeah.
Like you literally just did that for 6 years. You're like you did that. Like that's what startup life's going to be like. And people are like, oh, I'm scared. I don't know about uncertainty. You're like, uncertainty, you're making 20 grand a year working like 60, 70 hours a week.
And the light at the end, and the light at the end of the tunnel is like non-existent for a lot of it. It's like, and that's really what like business can, and that's why I think that's why I always get back to like starting a company. It's like there's that personal element too, is that if like you get through that, and if you're like, I can do that again, and like I personally can like, embrace this kind of element, then okay, for sure. Then like perhaps like starting a business is like, in it for you. But like if for anyone out there who's like, oh, I hated that, like, because that is what your life is gonna be. Cause like that element of like wanting to run through walls, like you gotta kind of like it. Because, and honestly, I don't think it ever gets better. Like I feel like even as you get to scale and maturity, you're still like kind of feeling around, and like it is not as calculated as people outside looking in might
totally. And I do think, again, like, people ask me like, can I do a startup? I'm like, well, I did it, so you can too. Like, it's not like I'm but there are things that help or make it harder, like certain traits. I mean, I've sort of kind of landed on this saying where like being a CEO is a job. I have tasks, I do things for money, right? Being a founder is a statement of like what happened, right? Like I founded a company. That's just a thing. Being an entrepreneur is a mental disorder, right? Like it's basically like, and it's the kind of thing that makes some people just like always didn't like you because of certain traits you had, right? You're like, usually you're like impatient, you interrupt people all the time. People will say no and you immediately do that thing. Like contrarianism, like these are all little pieces, but then when you're an entrepreneur, you're like doing that all the time, right? Like you're like, I'm trying to do this thing, and a person in authority says, no, you can't do the thing, and so you do it anyway and piss them off. Like, but that's a thing that you have to do constantly, And a lot of people, like, it's very hard for them to do it because you're basically embracing conflict, like little micro conflicts all the time, right? And you just that's just like the ocean you swim in. Like, you're like, I drink problems.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
yes, conflict. Yeah. Like,
I mean, spot on. I mean, I think you kind of like, I would agree. Like when I'm just like thinking about my weeks and days, this is like running towards conflict, like, in just like embracing it. And that's kind of the thing where, and that's the kind of like, exactly that kind of like mental disorder that you kind of gotta have it, because like you're gonna be miserable if you can't embrace that.
I'll give you an example, and this is something that, for the listeners, when you're in charge of a company, one of the things that happens is, and one of the reasons why it's hard, is that you are the final stop for all the problems, right? There's problems happening. Some of them are easy, some of them are hard. Some of them people want to solve, some of them people don't want to solve, right? If there's an easy problem, somebody else will take it. If there's a hard problem, maybe they'll take it. If there's a really hard problem and nobody wants to touch it, it all goes to you. So all day, what you're doing is you are basically dealing with the worst stuff that nobody else.
Yeah.
And once in a while, so we are the kind of company that sells stuff and we deal with customers all the time. And once in a while, something bad will happen with a customer project. And a customer will be like, I paid you all this money, and then, like, I don't know what, the data disappeared, something. And a lot of times it's their fault, and you have to figure out delicate ways to tell them it's their fault. But a lot of times once in a while, like, it's our fault. Like, we effed up. And at that point, your whole team becomes little baby lambs. They're like,
yes.
We don't know what to do. Help us. Right.
Yes.
And you're the one, and they're all scared because they're like, fuck, we have to issue this like huge refund. This person is unhappy. What else is going to happen? And one thing, and everybody wants to like retreat. And you're the guy who is like, oh yeah, we're going to flip this guy. And what you do is, because, there's a lot of work. Like, if you like mess something up and then you overachieve and you overcompensate, that person actually becomes one of your biggest champions. And so we haven't always done this. There are sometimes we simply drop the ball and then fix it. But you get like a defiant, like the problem is ahead of you. Everyone's scared of it. You have to be, as the leader of a team, you have to be the one who says, we're going to punch that problem in the face. Like, everybody wants to run, but you're like, nope, we're going right at it. And everyone's looking at you. They're like, no, what are you doing? You're crazy. And you're like, that's what we're doing, people. And everyone's like scared and angry and mad at you. And you're like, we're going to break through that wall. And I'm forcing you to do this. And, you have to have that kind of defiance. Because then people they feed on you, right? They feed on your courage. Like, if you're defiant, they're all going to be defiant.
Yep.
And but like in the normal world, if you're just like at work and somebody says, hey, do this thing, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do the opposite. That's a bad thing. Like, everyone's going to think you're a jerk. And right. But when you're running a company, like, that's the kind of thing where you have to be like, we will overcome, and you just go, right? And so that sort of energy is, I think, to some extent, is almost a requisite. Like, again, like, not everybody is like that who runs successful companies, but I think it's much easier if you have that disorder.
Yeah. I mean, spot on. Like, I can think about experiences on my side too. And I love when you flip what would seem to be a problem into an opportunity. And I mean, business is just problem solving. Like, that's really all it is.
Constant problem.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm just like, oh, why is this like problem recurring? And then like, oh, we can actually turn this into a business line. Like, because it's a signal. And also when it comes, exactly what you said, like, I remember in the earliest days, one of our early customers was a Quest company, Quest Diagnostics, and all of the instruments, like, we outfitted their lab with like a whole robotics lab, and everything broke at the same time. And
that's how it likes to break.
Yeah, I was like, huh?
At the same time.
Yeah, I was like, what? And obviously furious. And we always take great pride in like being not just like a equipment leasing company, but like we're going to get you up when things go down. And God, it was stressful, but like we had to the last thing you should be doing is like shirking away and just like curling up and hiding. It's actually, you have to like run. The quicker and harder you embrace it, the more. So fast
you
forward.
got to rip the Band-Aid off. You got to do it.
The procrastination. The procrastination is actually just compounding the issue. Like, so like, just for anyone who's just listening out there and you're thinking about if there are things that are in your startup right now that you're like, damn, I've been putting that off, like, get it, like, you probably should jump on it. But like, we did it, like, we jumped on it quick, went like above and beyond and looped in, like we basically were cashing in like all our kind of like, social capital to call in the favors and everything to get it done. Got them up and running like quicker than they anticipated. And when I say quicker, it took like, weeks to a month, but it was like mission critical. And at that point in time, that was when we got like Quest as a champion.
Yeah.
And we're like, and that's a game changer. Like, they were furious, like originally furious. And I was like, oh, this company's we're not going to exist after this. But then after that, it's like they sing our praise. And I was like, oh, like, you just got to go above and beyond when something like that comes up.
It's about expectations, right? Like, it's about, the secret to customer service is surprise.
Yes.
Right?
Surprise and delight.
They expect that you effed up and you're going to try to weasel out of it or whatever. But those are great opportunities because then it gives you the ability to do something unexpected, which is surprise them with how good you're going to be. And those are, for people listening, if you're in sales or if you're just generally running a startup, sometimes you get an email from a customer that something didn't work or isn't going how they want, and you can tell they're like starting to prepare for a defense. Like, they're almost like, it's like they're laying out evidence for a lawsuit almost, right? They're like itemizing things in the email. You should see that as a precious pearl, because what they're telling you is that they're ripe for disruption, right?
Yeah.
They set up this whole thing and they're like ready for a fight because they think that you're going to be a normal company and you're going to push back and be like, sorry,
this is on you.
Say blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Right? We're not going to do it. And then you go at them and you go like, I completely understand what you're going. Don't even address their bullet points. Just say, we're going to give you all of this for free. We're going to fix it. We're going to come out and do some other extra stuff. Just like surprise the hell out of them. And you're going to be embedded in their minds as the greatest thing they've ever experienced. And like when I see those little like messages and emails where people are starting to prepare for conflict, like those are like, they're better than just like satisfied customers sometimes. You're like, because then they bought a thing, they got what they wanted, they're happy. One day I'll try to get them to buy again, right? But if somebody's kind of unhappy, that's a chance to completely turn them and like get so much more. And they're happy, you're happy. It's a win-win. Like you're not manipulating them. You're like helping them. They fall in love with you. And now you love them, they love you, everybody loves each other, everything's great. Like it's such a win-win.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Biotech Startups Podcast with Ivan Liachko. In part 2, we'll follow Ivan through his time at Brandeis and Cornell, where he embraced lab life, navigated tight budgets, and began shaping the perspective that would guide him as a founder. He also shares lessons on resourcefulness, managing uncertainty, and why being underestimated can be a superpower in both science and business. If you're enjoying the series, follow the show, leave us a review, and share it with a friend. See you next time. The Biotech Startups Podcast is produced by Exceeder. Don't want to miss an episode? Search for the Biotech Startups Podcast wherever you get your podcasts and click subscribe. Exceeder provides research labs with equipment leases on founder-friendly terms to support paths to exceptional outcomes. To learn more, visit our website www.exceeder.com. On behalf of the team here at Exceeder, thanks for listening. The Biotech Startups Podcast provides general insights into the life science sector through the experiences of its guests. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from the podcast is at the user's own risk. The views expressed by the participants are their own and are not the views of Exceeder or sponsors. No reference to any product, service, or company in the podcast is an endorsement by Exceeder or its guests.